Tom Pog. I'm the president of ExplorOcean here in Newport Beach, and I want to welcome all of you tonight. The lecture is paid for by you as members, as well as the Winslow Maxwell Trust is a major supporter for our lecture series. And we have tonight Carlie Wiener is talking from the Schmidt Ocean Institute, okay, about her, this is the Falkor, their boat that they have. You have a little postcard that probably explained a little bit of it. And let me get back here a little bit and tell you a little bit about Carlie and her credentials. So Carlie Wiener is the communication manager for Schmidt Ocean Institute, and she spent a lot of time at sea participating in research and sharing about exciting science like following marine mammal populations, finding iron-eating bacteria in deep underwater volcanoes, and new species of all types of creatures at the bottom of the sea. Carlie has twice sailed with the Schmidt Ocean Institute's research vessel Falkor. Anybody know what Falkor is? You're going to find out. When she is not at sea, Carlie hosts and produces her own marine science radio show, All Things Marine. She also has 10 years experience in marine science communications, working in research, outreach, evaluation, and professional leadership. She received her bachelor's degree, magna cum laude, in communications and a master's degree in environmental studies from York University in Toronto, Canada. And she lives in Hawaii, and so she's got this whole thing figured out, coming here. Carlie has 12 publications in journals such as Atoll Research Bulletin, Journal of Geoscience Education, American Biology Teacher, and Current Issues in Tourism. She's also currently studying to get her doctorate as well. And if you want to know her expertise, she is the communications director, but her expertise is in the Hawaiian spinner dolphins. So if you have a question on Hawaiian spinner dolphins, she can answer that, okay? Sometimes, like anything, if you dig too deep in some of the biology, she may not have an answer for that one, okay? But she can give you a very good overview of some of the important work that the Schmidt Ocean Institute is doing. And with that, I want to bring up Carlie. Come on up here and take over the show. Let's give a round of applause for Ms. Carlie Wiener.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. I just want to extend my gratitude to ExplorOcean. They have been wonderful hosts, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about Schmidt Ocean Institute and our research vessel, Falkor. So we'll start with an overview of Schmidt Ocean Institute. How many here before this evening have heard of our organization before? Okay, excellent. I've got a fresh crowd. So we'll talk a little bit about our organization and our research vessel, and then we're going to dive into the science. We'll talk about what the ship does, where it's gone, and if all things go well with technology and timing, we're going to connect live with our research vessel tonight that is currently in Perth Canyon. And hopefully over the course of this presentation, actually, they'll be getting the ROV in the water while we're talking, and so you'll be able to see it in real time all the way in Australia. So hopefully that will work out. Can't make promises, but we'll try. So I'd actually first like to start with a little introduction to Schmidt Ocean Institute, and I will make sure that this works this time. We had a little issue last time, and here we go.
Ocean Institute supports innovative marine science collaborations and communicates our findings to inspire people to care about our oceans. Keeping in line with this goal, we took 3 years to refit a ship into a state-of-the-art research vessel. Falkor embarked on her first journey in 2012. From her first voyage across the North Atlantic, Falkor and her crew began to make new discoveries and to share them publicly. Off the southern coast of Greenland, marine technicians were mapping the seabed when they noticed an unusual bump. Lowering a camera, they discovered the famed polar exploration ship Terra Nova, which had been missing since World War II. Falkor completed several missions in the Gulf of Mexico, including mapping the South Texas Bank, conducting surveys to assess reef fish, and examining the effects of oil from the Deepwater Horizon disaster on deep-sea corals. Cruise in 2013 produced the first bathymetric images of the Campeche escarpment, one of the least studied and largest geological features on Earth. High-frequency multi-beam sonar mapped 20,000 square kilometers of the escarpment that was believed to be formed by the impact of an asteroid hitting Earth. This is the same asteroid that scientists believe was responsible for causing the dinosaurs' extinction. In 2013, Falkor began its first full year of science services. Several expeditions were conducted using remotely operated vehicles. Exploration of hydrothermal vents in the Cayman Islands and low oxygen waters in Canada provided a series of important discoveries. A 60-hour dive was recorded using high-definition cameras while streaming online for global viewing. This provided a rare live view of the hydrothermal habitat. 2014 brought many firsts for Schmidt Ocean Institute, including a student cruise initiative and developing 2 full ocean depth landers. Schmidt Ocean Institute hopes to inspire a deep passion for ocean sciences by encouraging research at sea. 3 student cruises were offered in 2014. One of the student-led cruises explored the feeding behavior of deep diving whales. The data collected will help to inform scientists about whale prey and serve as a research platform for several student projects. Falkor also embarked on 2 cruises to one of the largest marine protected areas, the Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. 127,000 square kilometers of monument waters were mapped, an area 7.6 times the main Hawaiian Islands. These maps included 18 seamounts, 9 of which have been unnamed. The images produced from these cruises were recently used to find several undescribed species. Falkor's maps are contributing new understanding of the region's complexity, biological diversity, and value to living systems in the ocean and on land. Loihi Seamount, the world's largest undersea volcano, was also explored using autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry. The data collected from this cruise could provide insight into the ocean's overall climate balance. In just 3 years, over 17 cruises have produced valuable information to scientists globally. Schmidt Ocean Institute hopes to continue to advance oceanographic research and broaden knowledge of the planet's most important resource.
Okay, so that hopefully gave you a little bit of a taste of what our organization is about. Hopefully this works. Okay, here we go. So for all the science that we do, we actually have a very flat organization where everybody is very involved and very excited about the science. We have our research planning team, which coordinates all of our expressions of interest from scientists all over the world and help to plan a lot of our oceanographic cruises. We have our marine operations team. That's our crew that runs our vessel Falkor, and usually have a 2 months on, 2 months off time frame, as well as our finance team, which helps to organize logistics. Our organization, Schmidt Ocean Institute, was founded in 2009 by Eric and Wendy Schmidt, who had a passion for the ocean and wanted to really advance the frontiers of oceanography using technologies, as well as open sharing of information and inspiring people about the ocean. With that in mind, they bought Falkor, which was a German fisheries enforcement vessel, and refitted it for 3 years and was ready for sea trials in 2012. So we've only had actually 2 full years of science research, but in those 2 years they've been very full, and we continue to progress with lots of research expeditions. Our vision is really to understand the world's ocean using technology, intelligent observation, and open sharing of information. And we do this in a number of ways. We try to connect with audiences all across the world and catalyze open sharing of information to achieve lasting results. And we do this by developing new technologies, such as the landers that you saw in the video. We also do this by building new instrumentation, such as a remotely operated vehicle that we are planning on building in the next year. We do open sharing of information, so not only are scientists on board, but scientists around the world can utilize the data that we collect, and as well as advance at-sea infrastructure. This is Falkor again, a little bit of a closer look, and Tom mentioned you would learn why we call our vessel Falkor. And Falkor is named after one of the main characters in the story and movie Never Ending Story. Has anybody ever seen that or read that book before? A couple of people? Okay, so that is a great book, and the main character is named from Falkor, and we have quotes from the story on the ship if you ever make it on for a tour. So Falkor is 272 feet long and has capabilities to be at sea for 30 days. We have 17 science berths that we typically fill on every cruise. And so we are averaging around 8 or 9 cruises a year and are able to go out to pretty much anywhere in the ocean around the world. Not only do we have our vessel, but on the vessel we have 2 aluminum hull boats. One is a work boat and the other is an emergency boat. I'll go through some of actually the technologies that we have on the vessel that really make Falkor special. One of our capabilities is high resolution mapping, and we do this with our multi-beam mapping or scientific eco-standards. And this allows us to get very clear resolution of the seafloor, which helps for many science operations that we do, not only to understand and map new areas, but also to better grasp the terrain under the water for ROV or AUV missions. We have a small ROV or robotic operated vehicle on board. That's our CI Falcon, which can go to about 300 meters depth. We have a CTG rosette, which has 24 bottles on it. And for those of you that haven't seen this instrument before, this is very helpful for collecting seawater at different depths. And this will be able to tell scientists a lot about the ocean chemistry in the different areas of the world that we travel. We also have a 13-foot blimp with a 1,000-meter range, and some of that imagery of the whales from the top that you just saw in the video, that was collected with our blimp, so very good for aerial observations, as well as our video matrix, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. But this video matrix is where scientists on board can see everything that's happening under the water. We also can do over-the-side deployments with instruments such as the AUV and ROV, and also we have dry and wet lab facilities, so samples collected, whether they're water samples or core samples, can be processed and stored properly while on the Falkor. So with that, I'll actually take you through a little bit of a virtual tour of our vessel, so you might be able to get a better understanding of what it looks like on the inside. Now, this video is a bit choppy, so it sort of gives you the illusion that you're on the research vessel itself. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, so we'll start with the bridge, and this is where a lot of the action happens. This is where our captains will do a lot of our navigation and be able to get a real wide perspective of the ocean area, navigate charts, and really determine the plan of the day. Our scientists, though, if you'll notice, it's a very wide and large bridge, so our scientists can meet with the entire bridge staff and team to really plan out and determine what they're going to do. Our first priority is science, and we do that on a daily basis. All of the crew on Falkor are very determined to helping the scientists achieve their mission. And you'll see here, this is probably the most special part of the vessel, is our control room. And you'll see here, it sort of looks, almost has a spaceship look to it, but this is our video matrix where you can see everything that's going on in real time. We have over 24 video screens in that room, so you can see what's happening with mapping, with latitude and longitude, where you are, what's happening with the ROV. We also have a dry lab space and the marine technician's office right next to the control room, so that the hub of activity with the science teams on board really happens in that area. When our scientists come on board, we want to make sure that they're given the best opportunity to do the science. And the aft deck, or the back of the ship, is where a lot of our missions take place. And so we'll do a lot of over-the-side or back-end deployments of things like our AUV, ROV, our CTD rosette, all those instruments that I just showed you. Here is the garage where we would keep some of the instrumentation as well as workbenches, so that when things need to be tweaked, it's right there and accessible to the scientists and the science crew on board. Across from the garage, we have our wet lab, and that's where most of the sampling processing happens. So water samples, corals, fish, anything that our scientists are working on will work in this environment here. They have access to flowing seawater as well as fresh water. We have 3 different freezers so that species and specimens can be preserved properly. This is our engine room below deck, and this is where our engineers work very hard to keep Falkor running. When you're out in the middle of the ocean for 30 days, you're your own contained island, so it's very important to make sure you have a very good working area and an experienced engineering team that can help solve any problems that might come up while you're away. Anybody seasick yet? So as we move on from the engine room, which has been refit and worked on through the years, we move up to where some of the science berthing and science facilities are. One of those facilities is the library, and this is a large meeting room where the scientists typically meet on a daily basis. They can converse or make plans for the day. We also have Science at Sea seminars where both our crew and scientists get educated about the different science that's going on. Our berthing space is quite spacious compared to other vessels, and we try to make the scientists as well as the crew as comfortable as possible so that they can focus on the science at hand. And with that comes the gym and sauna. Most of our scientists are so busy, unfortunately, they don't often get to take advantage of some of these luxuries, but we like to make them available. They're there for 30 days. We want them to feel at home and feel like they're accomplishing a lot. Our upper deck areas are really nice because they offer 360-degree views. This is where a lot of not only gatherings and dinners could possibly take place, but a lot of aerial observation for marine mammals or seabirds, depending on the type of science or mission that's going on. And that concludes our virtual tour of Falkor. I hope you feel like you got an experience, at least to feel like you were on there a little bit. So as I mentioned, advancing technology is very important to Schmidt Ocean Institute, and one of the ways that we're doing that is trying to build infrastructure. And we have recently developed a remotely operated vehicle program, and with that we are going to be developing 3 different ROVs, or remotely operated vehicles, staging them in depth, with the first one being around 4,500 meters and culminating with an 11,000 meter full ocean depth hybrid remotely operated vehicle. So this will be able to travel to the deepest part of the ocean, which is 11,000 meters. In 2014, we were also very busy with development as we were able to build 2 full ocean depth landers. And these landers were instrumental for us in 2014 because they were able to help us find the deepest fish species ever found. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. But these essentially are elevators that can carry instrumentation or video equipment from the surface to the bottom of the ocean and can be acoustically released to come back up to the ship. I can show you, hopefully this will work, a quick little video. This is the first deployment of one of the landers that we built from the ship going down at the Mariana Trench in November of 2014. And so that's its first slow descent to the bottom of the ocean, 11,000 meters depth. It gets to the bottom. That's the end of the story. We also have high-performance computers at sea, and we're the first ship to have that. And what makes our vessel very special is that we have this high computing capabilities so that our scientists can process their data in real time. So what that means is a lot of times you collect data at sea and you can't do anything with it because it takes too long to download and process, and you have to wait till you come back onto shore. With our high performance capabilities, scientists can do that the day of the data collection and then look at it to help determine where they're going to go the next day, or maybe change their hypotheses a little bit about what they're looking at or where they're going. So this is actually a very important tool to have on board. We first implemented it actually in January of this year with our past cruise that was in the Tasmanian Sea trying to track down an internal tide. We also believe in sharing information not only with the scientists but with the public, and all of our information and data goes to Rolling Deck Repository and Marine Geoscience Data System, which essentially allows us to archive and curate the data for sharing and for future research. So now what I would like to do is talk a little bit about some of the science that we do and where we've been. This is sort of a map of the different projects or cruises that we've done in 2012 to 2014. You can see we have a pretty widespread of where we've been, from Western Pacific Ocean to Atlantic, and we've really expanded our cruises from when we first started doing a full ocean year of cruises in 2013 with 6 expeditions. We had 9 in 2014 and 8 this year at our plan for 2015. We had a focus on the Hawaiian Islands in 2014, where we had 3 student-led cruises, as well as several mapping cruises to the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands and 2 expeditions in the Mariana Trench. One of the things that was really unique about 2014 was our focus on students and really emphasizing training the next generation. Our goal was to be able to not only provide experience for students to be able to gain valuable skills and at-sea time, which they might not otherwise get, but also to really encourage them in their path through oceanography. And through these 3 cruises, we were able to do one cruise, our first cruise in February, which was dedicated to the feeding behavior of deep diving whales, and that took place off Hawaii Island. And the second one took place at Aloha Station, which is 90 miles north of Oahu, where students were looking at feeding behaviors, zooplankton at different stages and different depths in the water, as well as a mapping cruise. And that mapping cruise was really important to understand the history of Hawaiian geology. And then, as mentioned in the video early on, this was a very successful mapping cruise. We were able to map an area 7.6 times the size of the main Hawaiian Islands. And this is very important because the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument is one of the world's largest marine protected areas. Now, the mapping of this area allowed us to rewrite the geological history of the Hawaiian Islands. And how they did this was through the high-resolution mapping, they discovered that not all of these seamounts that were thought to be Hawaiian seamounts were Hawaiian seamounts. In fact, these ended up being Cretaceous seamounts, which are the ones that are circled in yellow here. And that means they are older by magnitude of millions of years. So that was a very large finding for us. The other really big finding with those maps was that those maps were used on later cruises in 2014 to do some dives on deep reefs or mesophotic reefs. And through that, our scientists helped other scientists through NOAA and other organizations find new species in these newly mapped areas. We also were able to travel to the Big Island to look at Loihi Seamount, an underwater volcano, and look at iron-eating bacteria. So essentially, this is a very rare bacteria that's oxidizing iron and producing these large rust mats. The scientists that we worked with the University of Hawaii were able to map these areas and really determine where they'd like to go down in later years with a robotic vehicle to study these iron-eating bacteria at depth. Our autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry, shown here in these pictures, was able to spend over 100 hours basically taking mapping and photo surveys of this region. And there's an example of the photo survey there in the middle. So you can see it almost looks otherworldly. And the hope is that understanding these bacteria might even help scientists understand life on other planets. Towards the end of 2014, we spent our time in the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. Now, this was a very exciting cruise because it was the first comprehensive cruise of the Mariana Trench that not only focused on the biological, but on the geological as well. And so we had scientists on board studying rocks, studying sediments and mud, as well as studying fish species. We had 2 cruises during this time that totaled over 40 days and had over 100 lander missions. And those lander missions were really important because they were able to capture some really unique footage. What you're seeing now is the actual footage from the landers at some very, very deep ocean depths. We're talking around 8,000, 7,500 meters depth. Now you'll see these species look a little different than the types of fish and eels you would see when you go out snorkeling on the reef. And that's because these fish are operating at extreme depths with pressures that are unimaginable. When you bring up some of these species to the surface, they start to immediately disintegrate because they're not used to the pressure difference. So these species are adapted to this high pressure environment and are unique to any other species in the world. So that's a cusk eel that you just saw, and these are some snailfish. You'll also see some large white shrimp-looking animals come across the video screen in a minute, and those are arthropods. Now, arthropods are found in other places in the world, but are typically very small. But what you're seeing here is gigantism, and the scientists have seen this in several different trench areas, but these gigantic arthropods are unique to these hadal or deep environments. There's what I was talking about right there. So quite large, actually. If someone before asked about the scale, they're about that big. So this was very unique, and this cruise was very productive in that not only were they able to find 2 new species of snailfish, those large fish you see in the video there, but they were also able to find the deepest living fish ever found. And this received quite a bit of notoriety in the press and was deemed the ghost fish. And I'm going to quickly show you a video of this ghost fish, and you'll see why it was named the ghost fish by the press, and that keeps happening. Just give me 1 second here. All right, that should work. So this ghost fish, as you'll see, kind of hovers, and I apologize, the quality of the video is not fantastic, but when you're at 8,000 meters, you can't be picky. And we actually found this fish on accident. What you're seeing here is some coring respirometers, and those were measuring the sediments or the mud in this deep environment. And what was really interesting is not only did we find this really cool new species at new record depths, but we were also able to find that the sediment communities in this area are some of the most productive. Oftentimes people think the deeper you go, the less productive the environment is or devoid, but actually scientists not only on this cruise but in other cruises are showing that these hadal environments are very unique ecosystems with highly developed. This is taken at 10,900 meters at Challenger Deep. Does anyone know what makes Challenger Deep so special? Anyone want to take a guess? Yes?
It's the deepest point on Earth.
That's absolutely right. It's the deepest part of the ocean on Earth. Well done. At 10,900 meters. And so you'll see here there's lots of little mini arthropods on this lander that's shown here. Very impressed over in the back there. So 2015 now, we've moved on from Mariana Trench, and we'll be back there actually in December, as you can see from the 2015 cruise plan. We have 8 cruises. Our first half of 2015 though was focused on Australia. And we started this year with our first cruise in the Tasman Sea, just outside of Hobart, and we had scientists from Scripps, not too far away from here, on board working with Falkor and collaboratively also working with the Roger Revell, which is a Scripps vessel. And they were trying to track down an internal wave or internal tide, which they called T-beam. And this internal wave is basically the size of a skyscraper, and they were trying to find this internal wave and map it, which they did successfully. Right now, we've moved on from Tasman Sea and are on Perth Canyon, which is about 50 kilometers off the west coast of Australia near Perth. Now, what makes this area very special is that nobody has really looked at Perth Canyon, even though it's so close to Perth, and definitely not explored with an ROV. And so that's the ROV we're using today, ROV Comanche, and we're mapping this area not only with the ROV, but trying to look for deep sea corals. And that's the main mission of the ROV today, and the dive that they're going to be doing is to be looking to sample some of these deep sea corals. And what the scientist, Professor Malcolm McCulloch from the University of Western Australia, is trying to do is to really understand carbon absorption and how our changing climate and changing oceans are going to affect some of these deep species in terms of how they absorb carbon. And so what they've been trying to do is to not only map the canyon, but collect some of these species. Now today we're going to have an opportunity to talk to some of the scientists on board, providing Skype cooperates. Okay, they asked for a 2-minute warning, so we're going to give them a 2-minute warning. Okay, we'll just go back to that in a second. So we'll have an opportunity to ask the scientists questions about the cruise that they're going on and get a live update. Now this is really unique because we're going to be talking in real time to the scientists that are working off of Perth Canyon right now. And in fact, I think they're in the process of deploying the ROV as we speak. So this is really unique because you get to really see the science in real time. And they've been doing a few dives this week. I'll show you some of the footage. And I've been standing by to help with the live streaming, and it's really unique to hear the commentary coming from the scientists as they explore and see this area for the first time. This is the first, these areas have not been seen by human eyes before, and so being able to share that experience with them is quite unique. So this is the command center or control room, which I personally think is the hub of activity on Falkor. And so this is what typically it looks like, and when we're talking to the scientists, this is sort of where they're going to be really watching the ROV cameras and seeing what's going on, being able to talk to the bridge with the captain who's driving the ship. It's a lot of coordination happening all at once. And so that back right here is Professor Malcolm McCulloch, who will be talking today. We'll also be talking to our lead marine technician, Leighton Rowley, as well as one of the ROV technicians, or one of our ROV members at Schmidt Ocean Institute, Ruben Mills. So we're going to try and give him a call. Bear with us because technology is sometimes unpredictable, but I'm hoping this is going to work. Hi guys. Can you hear us okay? Okay.
Hi, Carlie.
Hi Malcolm. So I would like to introduce to you, I can't turn my computer around, but there's a lovely audience of about maybe 45, 50 people here with me at ExplorOcean, and we've just been talking about Schmidt Ocean Institute and the research vessel Falkor and the current cruise in Perth Canyon and some of your work. And I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about what's going on right now, what you guys are doing, and how things are going.
Sure. Well, we just had some technical difficulties with the ROV. It's quite a technical marvel, so some of these things aren't expected. Or unexpected. So we're just about to next hour or so launch the ROV into an intermediate depth site. So we have a dive that we to get down to the point where we have to see the bottom levels. We've had the two dives where we got to the bottom. We've seen both sites have been, or both dives have been successful. Corals, we've seen some very interesting outcrop, or the size of it is it's been pretty exciting. We haven't collected that many samples yet, but we've got some wonderful imagery of the of corals growing at both intermediate depth and also quite deep water. We found some interesting very deep water corals that shouldn't be where they are almost. They're below the saturation horizon calcite, and so that's really interesting. We've done some wonderful mapping, multi-beam mapping of the canyon. We found at the resolution that the Falkor has been able to do is kind of opened up, sort of like it's right looking at high resolution through the Grand Canyon. We've got these wonderful steep-sided faces, some former valleys, and when we've gone down the ROV, some parts are as steep as what the multi-beam is saying. So
our multi-beam system really has to be looked at this. I mean, it's very difficult to map a 300, 400 meter high cliff, and the resolution of recent vessel Falkor of this cruise.
Yep, so the next hour or so we hope to get the ROV launched. And we've got a site where it's right in the middle of what we call the Antarctic intermediate water that comes up into the canyon. And that's the site, that sort of water we noticed in one other location in the Southern Oceans where deep sea creatures like to hang out, so to speak. So we go in the ocean lake with sort of more abundant corals. As an aside, at the moment, just to let you know, at the moment, because we're filling in some time, we do a bit of mapping near the site, we're sitting over a shipwreck, the HMAS Durban,
We've been doing the sonar. You can describe that.
Yeah, at the moment we're running a series of lines. We're just waiting for a small boat to bring us a spare item. So at the moment we're just doing a transect at the just east of the canyon. And there's a wreck in about 200 meters of water. So we're running a series of lines across this wreck, which was scuttled as a fish attraction device. And just getting an idea of that wreck size. It's good for our sonars as well to survey over a known wreck. So yeah, it's looking cool. We're just making a pact over it at the moment. So I'm just going to dash and make sure we're on target for that. And I'll leave these gentlemen to continue answering.
Thank you, Aiden.
That was our lead marine technician and a bit of a genius when it comes to multi-beam mapping, along with the rest of our marine technician team out here now.
Yeah. Ruben might be able to show the picture of the ROV.
Aww. You guys cut out just as you were showing us the ROV. You guys still there? Oh.
We're still here.
Okay, there you are. You're back. Oh, you're gone.
They just done repairs on the hoses, doing the final repair. It actually takes some time to do all the different final checks, make sure everything's ready to go. It does take a good half an hour to get it all ready. What you can see is it's actually meant in a cage, and the whole cage in the ROV goes to the intermediate water depth. Then when it's ready, the ROV will exit the cage and has its separate and typical connection to the cage. Yeah.
Well, we lost video, but I will definitely show a picture of the ROV in the cage for the audience so they know what you were showing just there. I'd like to, if you guys are still there with us, open it up for questions for a couple minutes. Do you have maybe 3 or 4 more minutes to take some questions?
We'll just go to a slightly quieter spot on the ship.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll start by combing the audience here. Why don't you come up so they can see your face when you ask the question? Okay.
I'm kind of shy.
Oh, that's okay. What's your question?
Better looking than I am. Can you call them back out of curiosity? Can you see if you get a good video pickup again?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can try hanging up and call again. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Ruben or Malcolm?
Is the talking dog Australian?
We'll try one more time.
How deep is this Perth Canyon?
Yes, we're here. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. So we have our first question from the audience is, how deep is the canyon?
From the land side or the entrance to the canyon, it is about 250 metres deep. And then it quite quickly deepens as you go down the valley. Near the top side, it's about 1,500 metres. Then about halfway down the canyon, it gets a little bit narrower. We call it the dog leg. And at the bottom of that is about 2,500 metres. And at the very exit of the canyon, on the seafloor, it's almost 4,000 metres. And so it gradually winds its way up onto the continental shelf. So basically from 4,000 metres to 200 metres.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great. Anybody else have some questions from the audience?
What was the name of the ship that they're over, the shipwreck?
What's the name of the shipwreck that you guys are over right now again?
The HMAS Derwent. D-E-R-U-E-N-T.
Okay, excellent.
Derwent.
Now, I know we have a few budding ROV engineers in the audience. We have some students here. Ruben, I was wondering if you might be able to give some advice to these budding students.
If you're familiar with STEM training at the Bonet, science, technology, engineering, and math, choose the discipline that you enjoy, whether it's sort of more of a mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. Do you enjoy design work? Do you enjoy taking the equipment into the field and operating it yourself? And make sure you choose the path that you enjoy. and the work would be easy. It's not work, it's what you do. But don't give up on the math classes, don't give up on the physics classes, because those are your basis for this type of work.
Solid advice, Ruben. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Carlie, how was the canyon created?
How was the canyon created? Do you guys know that answer?
This is our observations are really helping to clarify the idea of this. It's not clear, I should say we don't have a simple answer, but we are seeing very steep-sided walls, but also quite pronounced and very clear benches. So my view is that it seems to be a sea level control feature, but probably because parts of it are quite deep, at least 700 metres, 600 metres, even down to 1,000 metres, I think most of the features may have been created some time back, at least 50 million years, perhaps in the Cretaceous time, 100 million years ago. So it's a sea level control, I think basically a sea level control feature, perhaps when the rifting of Antarctic from southern Australia occurred. But it's still on some debate. The other issue is that we see similar rock-type lithologies which control also the topography. So it may be a combination of the sedimentary rock types and the sea level control of those. Okay.
Thank you for that. We have another question in the front here.
Can you estimate the rate at which the Antarctic deep water is traveling?
Malcolm, did you hear that, or you want me to repeat that?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Can you estimate the rate that the Antarctic water is traveling? Did I get that right?
Okay. It is entering. No, we don't. We have an oceanographer on our vessel, but it fluctuates its movement. It sloshes in and out of the canyon. It's on the bottom. It occupies the bottom half of the water column in the canyon. Velocity is very slow, actually. When you're down the bottom of the canyon, we don't see any evidence for more than maybe a knot or half a knot or less of water flow. So it moves very slowly up and down the canyon, but at certain times of year, there's some wind-driven upwelling. And they're the intermediate Antarctic waters that are filling probably up to a depth of about 1,000 metres or 900 metres into the canyon. So they tend to fill the bottom half of the canyon. Those Antarctic, and they move slowly.
Thank you, Malcolm. We'll take 2 more questions here and then we'll let you guys go.
How much do they expect water levels to increase over 20, 30, 40 years here in this area, Newport Beach?
Malcolm, would you be able to answer how much you expect water levels to increase in 20, 30, 40 years? Maybe where you are, but also here where we are in California, Newport Beach area.
We're talking about general sea level change. Let me just try and think. Here where we're based in Perth, over the last 100 years, we've seen at least 20 centimetres to 30 centimetres sea level rise. I would think in the next 40 to 50 years, we'd see another at least 20 to 30 centimetres. But there's lots of unknowns in the sea level. It's rising faster generally than models predict, and it could certainly by the 2100 get to several metres higher than present day. It's subject to the rates of land-based melting of ice, or melting of the land-based ice, and the rate seems to be increasing faster than what most early models predicted. So, but I give advice to people by 2100 you should be prepared for at least several metres of sea level rise.
Thank you. Okay, and our last question here.
I think I mentioned to him that I think we're the latitude south, or they're the latitude south, that we are latitude north, roughly around 33. And we have upwelling here, and I thought I maybe heard him say upwelling in that when he was talking about the current. Do they have upwelling off of Perth near the coast there, like we have upwelling here?
Sure.
Then I want to ask something else too, see how it goes.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, it's a two-part question. The first part is here in Newport Beach, we're sort of your counterpart in terms of latituding. We heard you mention upwelling. We have some upwelling here. Can you talk about the upwelling that's happening over there if there is upwelling? Close enough?
Off of Perth.
Off of Perth.
Upwelling in the Perth Canyon not as strong as what you would see on the west coast of the US, but it is because we have this channel, the canyon. There's a flow up the canyon, and it breaches the canyon walls near where we are actually. Then depending on, we have another current called the Lewin current, the surface current, and it tends to form eddies. So there's an interaction of deep water bringing nutrients up, and there's the southward flowing current. They interact with each other. The action is not particularly strong. It's just a few knots on the surface, and depending on the time of year, you can get reversals of the direction of current. At the moment, we've actually had a little eddy developing. Normally, the surface current flows southwards, but we've just been picking up other information from gliders and so on that there's actually an eddy forming, and they're now starting to flow northwards in our region. So that's a little bit of interesting information. But the currents generally are nowhere near as strong as what you would have on your coast.
Thank you, Malcolm. And
the currents bring up nutrients, and about 200 or 300 meters, there's a zone where whales like to feed. So just in the canyon and near the canyon, there's often 10 to 20 whales hanging around, using it as a stopover point on their migration. Things for whales, the small pygmy whales. Yeah.
well, we hope maybe you can capture some of those pygmy whales on the ROV. That would be fantastic. And the last part of this question, sorry.
Just a little bit of a big change in the subject. Does he know more about the Royal Freshwater Yacht Club there in Perth? I'm just wondering if he happens to know anybody there.
Do you know anyone at the Royal Freshwater Yacht Club in Perth?
I know where the yacht club is, but I don't know any members of that. So I'd be happy to be introduced to some.
Okay. Malcolm and Ruben and Leighton, if you're there, thank you so much for taking some time. We know how busy you guys are. Thank you so much. We hope you have a successful ROV dive. We'll be tuning in. All right. Have a good one. Bye. So that was great because they are dealing with lots of moving parts and all kinds of things happening, and so we're fortunate to not only capture one but 3 of them for a little bit, as well as a somewhat clear video, so very happy with that. And what I'll do now is I'll actually turn it over to the audience if you have any questions about Schmidt Ocean Institute, about any of our other research expeditions, or about Falkor. But while I'm answering questions, I'm going to share with you some of the footage, and this was in real time last evening. This was last night's ROV dive. So this is the bottom of Perth Canyon that they're talking about, and so you can see some of those deep water corals that they're interested in. And this is actually taken off that sheer rock cliff that they were talking about, and so that was what they were working off of last evening, or daytime their time. So you can take a look at that, and I'll forward through some of the footage and try and highlight some of the pieces of this 5-hour dive so you can see some cool corals as well as the ROV mechanical arm working.
Do you know how deep those are?
I believe they were talking about 750 meters depth last night. I don't know if that was the final depth. I went to bed around midnight, so yeah.
At what point is there no more light? I assume this is totally dark.
It is dark, and actually it's surprising at how much light they are getting when they're going down, and I encourage all of you, all these dives are streamed live, so Schmidt Ocean Institute Photos is our YouTube channel, and you can tune in, or also off of our website, schmidtocean.org. But when they're deploying the ROV, for a good 45 minutes, drop down into the ocean, they're still having some light coming through. What you're seeing here, though, is artificial light on the ROV. Any questions about the ROV? Okay, lots of questions, yes.
I don't have a question, but I want to share with you that I am 80 years old, and this is probably the most exciting thing I've been through, to be able to communicate with them further.
Amazing. Well, thank you. We're so happy you could be here tonight. Yeah.
That's the most exciting thing other than meeting me on my
Of course.
I do have a question, and it has to do with the financing. I sailed as chief engineer on board Endeavor when she came here, and we had a 16-man paid crew and women. And we had 40, not passengers, but they were working crew members, 36 of them, and 4 of them were supercargo. They ate with the officers and had cabins and did nothing. Except one of them had a bucket that he continuously filled. bad trip for him. And I was wondering, does Falkor have such an arrangement where they have people who pay to go on these junkets and are working and assisting, doing things?
So that's a great question. Our research vessel has dedicated crew. As I mentioned, we rotate our crew on and off. The scientists that come on board, we have 17 berths open for science. They are awarded those through Schmidt Ocean Institute through application process. Every December, we open up our application process to expressions of interest from anybody around the world. So, whether it's a graduate student scientist, PhD scientist, state, university, federal, whatever it is, they can apply for research time on our vessel. Those expressions of interest are then sent out for a peer review. And so those go out to experts in the field that are non-conflicted, and they'll rank the expressions of interest. They come back to us, and then we will take those ranked expressions of interest and select the top 25 to 30 and invite them back for a full proposal. So 4 months later, we get a full proposal from each of the science parties that were invited. Those will go out to experts in the field for review and evaluation, and then we'll have a panel where we'll map out where all the proposed research is based on the ranking, and then make a suggested cruise plan. Those go for the year. Those go to our, eventually those recommendations will go to our board, and they will approve it or not approve it depending on what's going on, and typically it's approve it and they'll get the ship time. So we don't offer financial grants, but we offer ship time, and we plan our process 2 years in advance. So right now we're planning for our 2017 year of research.
So the Schmidt Institute is apparently quite adequate to handle this whole
Yes,
job.
we're very adequate to do that.
How did Schmidt make his
Google.
He's the Google guy.
We focus on the science that we do, and we try to involve our founders, and they're very excited about our technology-driven research and are passionate about sharing that information, and so we work closely with them on that. Other questions? Yes?
Have you been on the ship?
I have. I've sailed twice on Falkor, in 2014 for the Loihi underwater volcano cruise, as well as one of the student cruises.
Do you know any update on when the ship that's been at our bay for so long is going to go to the Mariana Trench and put their submarines down to the bottom?
I'm not sure about the ships that are here that you're talking about. I know Falkor is going back to the Mariana Trench in December of this year for another cruise. Yes?
What's the time difference between here and where they are now?
That's a great question. I'm very familiar with that answer. I've been working on the live streams. So right now in Perth, I believe it's probably close to noon. So they are a day ahead of us, and I don't know, 12 hours or something like that. So they're quite ahead of us. So their dives that they're doing are usually, they're aiming for 8 a.m., but really they're happening around 9, 10 in the morning, but that's happening at night in Pacific time. Anything else? Yeah, in the back there.
How long can the ROV spend at one time? How many hours?
That's a great question. So typically, it depends on the type of ROV that you're using. This particular ROV we're using on this cruise, the ROV Comanche, we're diving or have capabilities to dive for about 8 hours at a time. In the back?
Carlie, can you tell us a little bit about Hawaiian spinner dolphins.
Sure.
What's the big challenge out there with those? I mean, we see them when we go to Hawaii.
Okay,
But what's
so
going on with them?
how are we going to tie this together? Okay, so spinner dolphins is not something that we're focusing at Schmidt Ocean Institute, but something that I've done for my own research for my doctorate work that I've been doing on the side. And I'm looking at the interaction between Hawaiian spinner dolphins and people through dolphin swim tourism. And I'm essentially looking at how people's attitudes and perceptions influence their behavior in the water and how that behavior influenced the dolphins. In Hawaii, we have Hawaiian spinner dolphins, which are a coastal species. They're one of the smallest dolphins, and they're called spinner dolphins because they jump and spin a lot. They're very interesting animals. You should YouTube it. You'll see lots of cool video. And they sleep during the day and hunt at night. And so when they're sleeping during the day, they have a very predictable behavior. They come to these sandy bays and rest. And this is where they encounter people that want to swim with them. There are quite a few vessels, both on Oahu and on the Big Island of Hawaii, that target dolphin swim tourism. So we'll put people in the water with the dolphins, and that's sort of what I'm looking at, is that interaction, how the dolphins respond to that, and how people respond to that. Yes?
I don't really make the connection between the bacteria that feed on iron and the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, and bait fish. Is there any connection there?
So there is no connection in the sense that they are different cruises that went on Schmidt Ocean Institute's vessel Falkor. So we had a zooplankton and phytoplankton-based student cruise where they were looking at the zooplankton communities at different depths off Station Aloha. And then we had a separate cruise which happened off the Big Island of Hawaii that was looking at these iron-eating bacteria on the underwater volcano, Loihi Seamount. And Dr. Brian Glazer at the University of Hawaii was using an AUV to study that off of Falkor.